Welcome to the Godcast. Zach, did you notice one of our friends in the Discord, Moreland350, noted that in a podcast, the best dynamic is one person that's kind of upbeat, called a normie, and the other one's really grumpy and just looks to complain a lot. And I feel like we can switch back and forth in that dynamic, but after a weekend like this, a homestand like this, is there really a reason to be grumpy?
Yeah, there's no baseball today.
Fair enough. You found it. You found the one thing worth complaining about.
My goal was to be grumpier in 2025. I'm succeeding.
You are definitely doing that. And I just got to believe that you're in hell because you have to spend some time talking about the weekend that Gabriel Arias had. But he was big part of the offense waking up a bit against Kansas City and being able to take a second consecutive series. He had the sweep against Chicago, taking 2 consecutive series against Kansas City. You started out pretty well within your own division.
Yeah, if I was the grumpy host on this show, I would point out Arias' league worst whiff rate. But I'm not. I'm the upbeat one. So what a great few games for him, for Anel Martinez. I think, do we agree the Twins stink? Can we get that out of the way? And we agree the White Sox are, even though they took 2 or 3 from Boston, they are also not worth our time and consideration here. You want to beat the Royals and the Tigers. Those are the teams you're going to be jockeying with, I think, all summer. And so you're 2 for 2 against Kansas City. That's like probably the top takeaway I can have of this season so far is like that's the series. If you list them, you played KC, San Diego, Anaheim, and Chicago. If you could hand select 2 series of those 5 to win, you would have taken KC and KC. So it's impressive. They won 4 of 6. They had to face Cole Reagans twice in those 6 games, and they won 1 and they lost 1. But you know, that was a, what did we say going? I mean, you made the joke about the White Sox are the best medicine, but they kept going. The White Sox cleared up what was wrong, and they didn't just get sick again. They remained healthy, and so that was the whole week was exactly what the doctor ordered.
And nothing matters if you don't carry it forward, or yet all of the caveats that we are going to inevitably drop upon you over the next hour or so. But it still is important. You came home. You had that really funky end to the beginning of the road trip at the beginning of the season. You cleared that up initially. Yes, you took care of business against Chicago, but I think there's just something to coming home, having the success, and then sort of hitting the reset button on any sort of negative feelings you felt through the first 3 series of the season. Yeah, you do what you got to do against Chicago. But like you said, Kansas City, these games are important now, because you're just trying to win and just trying to get on a roll to begin the season. But at the end of the year, when you're fighting with all these teams, having any sort of advantage you can have against them so that they have to, when they're looking at so many games behind you, they have to envision another game because you've won more games against them. Things are starting to work themselves out in a way that you can see sort of how the season is going to unfold for many guys. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't still some blips on the radar, potentially more. I mean, we'll get to Emmanuel Clase, what's going on there. So there's still some things that you want to see some positives to begin the year, but you feel like things are starting to get unfolded. And the season, as we joked about in our last episode, feels a little bit more real now that they've played some games. They've had their feet on the ground at Progressive Field.
Yeah, I mean, I think they played clean, like a healthy style of baseball over the weekend. Especially Friday and Saturday, I mean, they hit. The starting pitching was really good. And they weren't sloppy. I mean, that was the thing is on the West Coast, there was such a sloppy brand of baseball. They weren't running. They weren't being the aggressor. And they came home in those first 2 wins against the White Sox. It felt like they were fortunate to win those games. Like they didn't win. The White Sox lost them. And so then for 3 days in a row, I thought they put together really complete, well-rounded games. And the big thing is, this is an imperfect roster. It's an imperfect team right now. There's a lot you're trying to figure out, right? So we don't, are you confident that this is going to be your 5 starters that you want in the rotation come August? No, of course not. There are certainly kinks to work out in the bullpen. We know that. And offensively, it's so early that like not everybody's, when you peek under the hood, those metrics don't necessarily align with the stats that you're seeing, and you need to give more time to allow that to happen or not happen. So it's the easy way to say it is I think you're just working through a lot of things and trying to figure out, if you're Stephen Vogt, how do I put these players in the best positions to succeed? It takes some trial and error to get there. The good thing is when you're 8-7, when you're winning games, when you're beating teams that you're contending with, while you're figuring all that out, that's a good sign.
Yeah, I mean, everybody would love to be clicking on all cylinders at all times, but it's just not how baseball season goes. So to be able to steal as many wins as you can when maybe you don't play your best or your closer isn't closing the way that you anticipate, or even if you have to pull out weird ways to score runs against great pitchers like Reagan's, where you have inside the park Little League home runs, just adding to the weirdness of this homestand to begin the year. So you had a walk-off, you had a play at the plate, where a guy gets thrown out. Thrown out as his hamstring explodes. And then you have an inside the park Little League home run. The best part about that, I joked about it on X, is that Noel takes home because he's gone all the way around the bases from first, right? And he's thinking, as he's laying on home plate, he's thinking, this is my 5 seconds to catch my breath because I just had to run a lot. And then he realizes, as the young kid at the bottom of a slide does, because if you're at a playground and you're sitting at the bottom of the slide and it's a busy playground, you can't take 2 or 3 seconds to collect yourself down there because there is another pair of feet about to kick you out of the way. And that was Noel at home plate. He realized, oh, crap, I need to get the heck out of here because here comes Daniel Schneemann.
I was thinking about, you made me think of like a water slide. You get to the bottom of the water slide and like your bathing suit kind of comes off. You get water up your nose and you're just trying to collect yourself. And here comes someone else just zipping down this thing, ready to give you 2 feet to the kidneys. Yeah, that was, again, like you never know what you're going to see in a baseball game on a given day. We saw a lot of things this week that I didn't anticipate.
You just think that's your reward, right? Noel's sitting there. This is my reward. I was promised just a few seconds to collect my. No, you got to get the heck up out of there. That would be surprising in that situation. Probably as surprised as I am as I wake up today and I pull up the Fangraphs leaders and I look at the 2 guys that have most recently occupied second base for the Guardians. I'm talking about Gabriel Arias and Andres Jimenez, and I put them in comparison and I look at the numbers and I say, oh, crap. Arias is actually 7 points better in WRC plus than Andres Jimenez is at this point.
That's we going to do this every series? Or
compared to 130. I only bring it up because you did it to begin the year. You had to note his numbers. And Jimenez, I don't want to take anything away from him, and I know your point still remains. You could just still have both of them. But having said that, Arias deserves credit for starting the year extremely well. You've seen the opposite field power. That's all he has done, is brought a ton of opposite field power. They've been well-timed home runs for sure. And credit to him because there's a lot of questions about the middle infield. He's come out and played good defensive second base. That was a question when you traded away one of the best defensive second baseman I've ever seen, probably in the history of the game, at least for the span that Jimenez has played. And Arias, there's been no noticeable drop-off there.
It's Jamie Carroll erasure.
And looking at the WAR totals, Jimenez has been worth 0.6 and Arias has been worth 0.5. But point here is not to bring down Jimenez. It's actually to boost Arias and say, that's a heck of a first 14 games that he's played so far this season, and he deserves credit for it. I don't know how long it's going to last. He has been a guy that's been a tease before in his career. I know there are things below the surface that probably would lead you to believe that maybe a 137 isn't sustainable, but still, he's done enough in the first couple of weeks of the season that he's holding on to that job, and he's not a guy that I want to get out of the lineup right now. He is definitely someone that his spot is stable for the moment.
It can be a good thing if what he's done has just bought time, especially because they put all their eggs in the Rocchio basket at shortstop, and he hasn't done anything. So Arias could play shortstop. There's one guy we need to see soon, and his name's Juan Brito. And Anel Martinez coming up and just looking like a dude you want to put in your lineup every day complicates things a little further in a good way. These are good problems to have, but I don't know that Brito is going to be long for AAA. And I'm not. This is not me speculating on a roster move or anything. It's just I think he's going to just graduate soon. I mean, and the thing about Brito that's so different than all these other guys is he's got pretty well-rounded skill set here, where he has started hitting for power last year, 40 doubles, 21 homers, and off to similar power numbers this year. And you know that he can make the right swing decisions and draw a ton of walks and make enough contact. And it's just that offensive profile we're going to need to see it in the big leagues. So there are questions. Where does he play? Is he your second baseman every day? As you always say, this stuff will work itself out. The good thing is this is not desperation mode. You're not like, oh, Arias stinks and can't hit. Rocchio can't hit. Get Brito up here and start the clock on Bazzana here. It's guys forcing their way into the lineup. So with Arias, the big question to me, because he has absolutely pummeled fastballs this season, 741 slugging percentage against them. That's pretty good. What happens when pitchers just stop giving him fastballs? The one good sign is he's more than doubled his walk rate from last season. So he's sort of in the middle of the pack in the major leagues, which is a huge jump for him. The bad sign is his whiff rate, as I mentioned, is super high and crazy high on breaking balls. So if I'm a pitcher, I'm just throwing him junk. And can he make the adjustment? Don't know. I think, if I had to guess, I would say that he'll have stretches like this weekend, and he'll have stretches like he had the handful of days before that when he was 1 for 17 or something. And that's just what you'll live with. That, with really good defense at some position, is a major league player. So if we adjust our expectations and we know that you don't need him to be the second baseman for the next 5 years, I think there's a place for him in the majors. The question is, can he just minimize the valleys, maximize the peaks? And we don't have enough evidence to know that yet. What I do know is he's bought some time where he deserves to keep auditioning here. And also,
not only that, winning your games.
Yeah.
Winning your games, most importantly.
And also be a insurance policy at shortstop if Rocchio continues to not hit. So, it's all good so far. If you have an OPS over 800, I'm not going to waste too much time looking at your chase rate and your whiff rate and your strikeout rate. If that OPS drops, then I have to see if the metrics under the hood match that and speak to that continuing. But so far, the biggest skeptics of him in the world should be at least a little bit silenced here by the start that he's had.
Well, I don't even think it's a skepticism of, well, he's not going to continue at this rate. I mean, I have long been, even if I'm not a supporter, I'm a guy that says, let's give the guy with some skills that are clearly that when you hit a ball 116 in spring training, we all kind of rolled our eyes. TJ's going on again about the 116. But it at least showed me that this guy's got good bat speed and an ability to hit the ball like that. That is a major league player. It's just, can he get to that enough in games where it makes sense? I don't think he's a 137 WRC plus on his best days. I don't think that. But I think you have to adjust your expectation for every player. I don't want to hold Brian Rocchio to the same standard of player that I do Gabriel Arias, because they go about getting to their offense at their best in different ways. Gabriel Arias can do this where he'll go silent for 3-4 games, maybe more, but then it could have a weekend where he's on fire and single-handedly helps you win a couple of games because his hits are more meaningful if he's demonstrating opposite field power.
That was the issue for Freeman and Brennan, right? Is that if they were quote-unquote hot, it's singles with a double mixed in somewhere. And with Arias, hot for him boosts his OPS because his slugging percentage is nearly 500 now. And so you're right. And that's what I mean by it buys you time, because that is production that you're not getting at certain places. And like that's valuable. Like his hot surge covers more ground maybe than another player's because he's going to have doubles and home runs and major impact.
Yeah. And in his favor, too, because Rocchio obviously hasn't started the season super hot, he also bring the ability to play shortstop and switch over to third base, too, in a day when you want to get Jose off his feet. But also, the defense is going to keep Arias in the lineup, and it keeps his floor higher because if he contributes great defense wherever he's at on the infield, especially more often than not at second base, at least for now, his bat's going to stay in there, and that earns him more opportunities, especially when nobody else is kicking down the door. Now, I think you're asking an interesting question about Brito and maybe another guy further down the line later this year. And I want to ask a similar question about the pitching, which we'll get to. But it's an interesting thought of if everything continues to play out the way that it has so far with Arias, I'm not even saying just being great, but good, that you want his bat in the lineup, and Brito's knocking two. At what do you do there? You have the options. You can easily make the switch, but what's the catalyst for that happening? At what point does that have to happen if everything kind of continues along this path?
Yeah, this is a tougher one. I think you don't have to panic yet. And I say panic, I mean from like a transactional standpoint, not because, oh no, like Rocchio's not hitting, what do we do? Like Angel Martinez needs some at-bats now too. This is what gets complicated. But there are enough chairs in this game of musical chairs, I think. So Lane Thomas should come back Tuesday. And you could sit him at least once a week. There's a start in center field for Martinez. I think Jose is going to keep DHing once a week. Slide Arias over to third. Martinez at second. There's 2 starts for Martinez. Arias can sit at least once a week. There's 3. Rocchio can sit at least once a week. There, I've just created 4 starts for Anel Martinez each week. And I think that's how you can get a look at him and Arias and Rocchio and the odd man out to Schneemann, which I think is fine.
Sure, if you don't like inside the park Little League home runs, God,
so
okay, whatever.
If you do that equation for another month, then you reassess. And I think at that point, you have a better understanding of what Arias is. You have a better understanding of if Rocchio's postseason was a mirage. And you have a better understanding if that's a role that Martinez can handle. Or if you want to see more of him, or if he should go to AAA and play every day. And then you can, then Brito's the next guy. And you work him into that same equation.
Yeah, in the case of Rocchio, you look below the surface, there are some things happening that are better than last year, but it's still not great. There's nothing there it'd be a different story if he had hit into extreme bad luck, which he has had bad luck if you look below the surface. But it's like, well, he should be slightly below average, maybe even more than that, instead of one of the worst hitters on the planet. And that's not really selling me on much of anything at this point, but he deserves more time, and he's going to get it as you laid out. I love Angel Martinez coming up and sort of doing what he did last year, and it wasn't reflected when you looked at his stat line. But we gave him the credit for it throughout the offseason. He just came up and saved them a couple of times throughout the year when they really just needed somebody to come up there and be competent, or at least what we really saw against Kansas City, what he kind of feels like he's able to do is just be a bit of a spark plug, where you can plug him in somewhere and he can just kind of spark things. And I love the throw into third base, coming from center field, unleashing a ball harder than he's ever thrown at the major league level. Like that's a fun player to have. I don't know if Angel Martinez is an everyday player. Right now, I'm sort of skeptical about that. But that feels like a guy that can help you. Good teams need to have someone like that just glues everything together. He gives you the versatility all over the place. And yes, it's fun to have a lineup full of guys that can go bombs away. But sometimes it lines up where nobody is hot. And sometimes a guy like Martinez just slides in and just provides the life on a weekend series against the Royals to just kind of spark things back to life. And I think that's sort of the role that he can fill. I know Vogt initially when he called him up, he said, well, he's probably not going to start much. And then instantly he's been in the starting lineup, which is sort of funny, but that's largely because they couldn't play Lane Thomas, wanted to give him some time. And that's a beneficial thing too, right? Because you didn't have to rush Lane Thomas back earlier than you'd want to. And maybe just having somebody else that you can mix in will give you the comfort and the belief that you can give Jose more days off his feet. And I'm not talking about just DHing too. I think you really need to get him some actual, real, legitimate off days, especially when, weeks ago we were talking about, oh no, what about the wrist? And then he came back and he was on fire. But then he's cooled off significantly since then. And he's doing the thing that really worries me when you start to see one of the hands come off the bat in the follow-through. That's when I wondered if the hands and the wrist and everything is feeling okay, because there are times where he does that and he's not right. You have to have the faith that you can take him out of the lineup completely, and the guys that you plug in are going to be able to contribute. Maybe a guy like Martinez helps, settle down any concerns you'd have from removing Ramirez completely from the lineup on a particular day.
Martinez is probably the one of all those middle infielders. Is he even a middle infielder anymore? He looks completely competent in center. He's the one I feel like I know the least about. But you're right, the spark plug is the perfect word. I mean, last season he came up and it was like, oh, who is this guy? They loved him in spring training. And you blink and he's hitting second. It's like, what? But he eventually scuffled a bit. But he's just, I want to watch more of him because I don't know what this looks like. I'm intrigued. Where I feel like Arias' profile is pretty well known at this point. Rocchio's pretty well known at this point. And we're just trying to see if they can take that skill set and become legitimate big leaguers. With Martinez, I have no idea. And part of it is a good thing because he's so versatile. And maybe that's just where he winds up. Maybe it's as a super utility guy. Maybe it's like your Chris Taylor comparison that you love to make to anybody who flashes some versatility. I don't know. I'll be curious to see how they handle all this, knowing Burrito seems like there's not a ton left to accomplish at AAA. And I'm not saying they need to call him up tomorrow. I'm just saying it's something to keep on your radar because I just don't think there's much left for them to do in AAA, and they could use his bat. But the good thing is you'd be calling him up into a situation where it's congratulations to Juan. You earned this. Not, right. Hey, Juan, we desperately need somebody. Can you just get up here?
Yeah. We don't want to put too much on this young kid, but also you're hitting
Save
fifth
us
today. Yeah. And if you don't come through with runners in scoring position, we're screwed. Yeah, it's a much better situation, and they're clearly, I think they're in that bubble right now where everything could exist as it is now and push forward for, as you're talking about, for a month, and you're not screaming at anybody. What are you doing? Call that guy up. What is this service time nonsense? We're not playing any of those games. Everything can unfold the way that it needs to for now, and I there's some comfort there. Because I do believe when it's playing out this way, you will get to the right answer eventually. You will get to where you need to be. It will take just some time. But I'm okay with that right now because everybody that's in the jobs that they have right now are earning their keep. Rocchio is kind of teetering in that territory right now, but he's still young enough and has demonstrated some success on a really grand stage that he's just going to continue to plug away for now. But it is a curious thought. At what point do you make the switch, and what's the catalyst for it? If everything just continues to move along this path, is it eventually just going to be Burrito is just too good? And the message here is, I'm sorry, Brian, but everyone else around you has raised their game. And so you haven't necessarily done anything wrong, but you haven't done anything to hold anybody off at this point. And we're just going to have to make the switch. I guess that's the positive here, as opposed to, oh my God, everyone sucks, and we just need to run through the next line change here.
Well, you could ask the same thing about right field, because I think if you look Noel and Nolan Jones have not done much to this point. I thought Noel had some good at-bats throughout the week. It's also a little strange. I mean, the strikeout rate, he's cut down quite a bit, but he's only hit singles so far this year, which is just weird.
Right. But this kind of comes back to what we were talking about with the base running. Like, ask yourself, do you think he's now a singles hitter, or do you think that's just, if he's hitting the ball as hard as he has, even if it's on the ground, there are guys like Yandy Diaz where it's like, okay, well, maybe he needs to make an adjustment. I don't think he needs to make an adjustment. I just think it's going to happen at some point. And as long as he's crushing the ball 117 miles per hour, and the bat speed is like, I think I saw one at 83 miles per hour, just like that's going to eventually turn into the power.
And I would argue the same thing about Nolan Jones. Average exit velocity, 92nd percentile. Hard hit rate, 94th percentile. Bat speed, better than it was when he was 4th in the Rookie of the Year voting 2 years ago. Chase rate, excellent. Walk rate, elite. The strikeout rate's high. That's going to be part of his game, right? But when he makes contact, he is pulverizing the baseball right now. I would think he would eventually get rewarded. The question I have is, are both of these guys at a disservice because they're not playing every day? And that's another, just in talking about like how you sort all this out, how things work themselves out over time. It's just something to think about. For Jones, I think him being in a strict platoon is probably best for now. You know, he's going to play at least 2 out of every 3 days anyway. But I do wonder with Noel, like, what the solution is there. It feels like he probably just needs more at-bats, and unless you're going to sit Santana against certain righties or something, I'm not really sure how you get there. But 2 more guys who you really have to look under the hood, I think, for a fair evaluation of them. And if you do, you'd be more encouraged than you would be than if you just look at their stats.
Yeah, I mean, if Noel is consistently putting the ball in play and hitting the ball hard, and it's just not angled, coming off the bat at the right angle, I just think it's going to get there. And with Nolan Jones, too, you do so much of the process right. We know he's going to swing and miss through a lot of pitches. That's inevitably going to happen, but these are 2 guys with track records of power. This is not something where they just optimized it last year and they got their way to a big home run total and you didn't know if it was going to continue. These are guys that have done it every year of their lives in professional baseball.
How much
going to get there?
If you switched Nolan Jones 2 seasons, like if 2023 he was injured and had a 641 OPS, and then last season was his really good year with 20 homers, 20 steals, 19 outfield assists, and he got off to the slow. Do you think you would feel differently about his slow start?
Yeah, I would imagine so, yeah. But I'm not super panicked about it either.
Okay.
I just kind of feel like it could end up being a problem that maybe neither one of those guys turns it on, but I just kind of want to let it play out some more. I just want them to continue to hit and see what happens. See what happens with it. And hopefully everyone else, hopefully you have days like Arias and Anel Martinez sparking things to life. And then hopefully Jose has a few more multi-home run games and Kyle Manzardo's bat heats back up. And I don't know. I'm more than okay with right now just leaving everything as it is in right field and letting that just kind of give us the answer over time. Instead of just reaching in there and trying to grab the answer on April 14th. I just don't think you're going to get that.
Yeah, I'm with you. The
Wasn't
offense
it nice?
is perfect, says T.J. Zuppe.
Wasn't it nice? We're talking about process and seeing things below the surface that hopefully tell you better days are on the horizon. To have that conversation about Luis Ortiz and then him show you the better day on the horizon, 10 strikeout performance from him. And more than that, I mean, we talked about his command, how dog doo-doo it was in that first start against San Diego. I've been so encouraged the last 2 games. Yes, the strikeout totals were nice, but he didn't walk anybody against the Angels, and then he had a couple of walks, but 10 strikeouts against Kansas City. I mean, it's, again, showcasing even in a 10 strikeout performance, I don't think that's his final form, but that's just more reason why I'm willing to be patient with this and let this work, because that stuff looks like you should be able to get hitters out with the sort of stuff that he has. And maybe it's not always leading to a 10 strikeout game, because I don't think of him being a guy necessarily that's seeking those strikeouts. I think of him more as controlling contact and using a really heavy sinker to get a lot of ground balls. But man, that just looked like a guy that has that in there. And I just can't wait to see more. I think there are going to be more blips on the radar, and I think there are going to be more games like you saw against Kansas City too, until eventually he arrives at whatever his form is.
Not only was that a 10 strikeout game, but it was 10 strikeouts against the team with the second best strikeout rate in baseball last season. So that's a team that makes a ton of contact. And he said, yeah, contact this. The 3 starts, we've seen the worst of him, the averagest of him, and the best of him. And it at least opens your eyes. You're obsessed with this 116 mile an hour off the bat from Gabriel Arias against some 17-year-old pitcher in spring training, and that's fine. But I think, again, like, it gives you a bar. And now we know this is Luis Ortiz when he's really good. How do you get him to be that more often? The thing, and Stephen Vo pointed this out, but the thing that makes him enticing is, and you understand, it's a little bit like Clase, where you understand why the strikeout rate, especially like last year, his strikeout rate was not impressive at all. That's just not who he is. But his bread and butter is he's got this fastball, sinker, and cutter. So it's 3 heaters, and they're all moving differently, right? The fastball, it looks like it's rising, right? The sinker's going the opposite direction. The cutter is moving in. He can play the slider off of that. It's all this hard stuff that has this late movement. So when his command is really good, what's the big thing in pitching, right? The thing that has just changed the way we look at everything, it's tunneling. It's making all your pitches look the same for as long as possible. And when he can do that, and when his command is good, you don't know if you've got a pitch coming, and let's say it's low and inside corner at the knees, if that's a fastball, like, that's going to stay right there, right? And so you think, okay, well, I got to swing at that. That's going to be a strike. But if that's a sinker, you're wrong. You're going to swing over it. It's going to drop out of the zone. Or maybe he does it on the outside corner, and if it's a cutter, it's going to be 90 whatever and catch the outside corner. That's a pitch you're going to have to swing at. But if it's a slider, it's going to dart away at the last second. You're going to miss it. So I think command is so important because he's got all these pitches that are similar for so long until the end. And you can see why this would be a process, especially with working with a new group of pitching coaches, to fine-tune everything to make it so that these movement profiles all work in cohesion. And I think what you saw the other night is, like, that's the goal. That's when they are all complementing each other nicely, that's what you can get. And so it's extremely encouraging. And I think you probably have to have some of those bumps in the road to understand what doesn't work, to understand what to improve upon, what to fix. And so, yeah, how can you not be encouraged by that? I think, it didn't even dawn on me at first as he's doing it that, oh, by the way, like, this is a team that, remember in the first series we were talking about, Bybee and Williams didn't strike anybody out when they pitched against Kansas City, and it was like, oh, that's okay. You want them to be efficient and pitch deep into the game, and you're facing the Royals, who are going to make a ton of contact and spoil tough pitches anyway, so why chase the strikeout? And Luis Ortiz is like, hey, I'm not even a strikeout pitcher, and I just struck out 10. So it can be done if your stuff is really good, and his stuff was really good the other night. He threw 17 fastballs, by the way. Or 17 fastballs that Royals hitters swung at. They whiffed on 8 of them. That is when you know they are not guessing correctly, or they're not seeing the ball well enough, because you're doing such a good job of tunneling all your hard stuff.
I think Bo Naylor did a good job in that start too, not only helping him through it, but looks like he was stealing some pitches, especially late in the game. I know some Royals hitters probably were not thrilled with some of the pitches that were a little bit off the plate, but you earn that when you've been striking everybody out and you're not really walking a village here. So when you're around the zone with stuff that moves a lot and your catcher's doing a good job of presenting it, sometimes you earn those strikes just as much as maybe the umpire can make a mistake. Doesn't make it any less frustrating, I'm sure, as a hitter when the pitcher has the sort of stuff that he does. But it's backed up not only in the walks but in the location plus numbers. And we've been talking about, oh, just wait, the stuff plus has been really good. Just look at the pitches. The pitches are great. It's just the location that's been awful. And the location plus has crept up to where it was even at last year, which is a little bit below average. But I mean, if you're around a league average location with the sort of stuff that he's creating and generating, I'm excited about it. And I also wonder, I mean, you're talking about maybe there's some benefit for a pitcher coming over and not having success because you learn what isn't going well, what do I need to work on. I wonder, could Carl Willis ever sort of be happy that a new pitcher that he wants to impart new things upon comes over and doesn't have success? Do you think he ever privately thinks, yes, because now he's seeing the things that he was doing before, that there are some problems here, and he will be more likely to listen to me and maybe be accepting of the changes we want to bring, because he's going to be like, I don't know what's happening here. My stuff's just not that good. What do I got to do, Carl? What do I got to do to get better? You tell me, I'm going to do it. Maybe it's not to that level, but I do wonder if it makes it easier for a pitching coach working for a guy for the first time, if some early struggles help fortify maybe the changes they want to make and help them get there a little bit more quickly.
100%. I remember hearing it about, I want to say Plesac, but there have been other pitchers too where they come up and Carl leaves him alone. Like they're not getting a pitcher from AAA or a pitcher in a trade and saying, okay, here's what we've identified. You need to do A, B, C, and D, and then you'll be great. And the pitcher's like, what? I got called up because I was doing really well at AAA, and you want me to change everything? Or, well, you guys traded for me because I had a really good season with Pittsburgh last year. No, I think there is a little bit of, we've identified these things that we think will make you great, but it is far more impactful if you go out there on your own, you have some struggles, and then we put our heads together. Because they might, the pitcher is going to feel stuff too and have an inkling. Like if he can figure it out for himself, that's the best way to make, substantial changes. And Carl Willis has said that too. It's, sometimes someone pitches for the first time in a Guardians uniform and it might be ugly. And the second one might be ugly too. But the goal is them to understand why the changes are made. Like, remember the story with Shane Bieber? He was told in Double-A, like, look, man, you're breezing through the minors. Like, this is too easy for you. You're going to need a change-up when you get to the majors. Why don't you start working on it now, just to give you something to do? And he's like, why would I need that? Like, hitters can't touch me down here. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. And they're like, please just trust us. And, they could have waited till he gets to the majors and, gets hit a couple times, or maybe it's really easy. And then they're like, hey, how about a changeup? And he'd be like, well, again, like what I was doing in the minors, just like I had an ERA under 2. And sometimes you need to fail to be more willing to accept or embrace the input, or to seek it on your own. I think that's the way they go about things. I'm not saying that's what happened with Ortiz, but yeah, I think sometimes it's a great idea to like implement something new, but if you're implementing something new because you have tangible evidence that you need to change something, I think it's more effective.
I also wonder if over the years they've been more accepting of their own failures too and learn from it. And I mean in development, because for a long time you could point to Corey Kluber, you could point to Shane Bieber, and then recently, look at what we've done with Tanner Bybee. We take these pitchers that they're really good around the zone, don't really have necessarily a ton of velocity, but we turn them into legitimate aces. But there are still guys that they didn't succeed with, that they brought in that weren't great. I look at a guy like Tobias Myers, who obviously what trade he was involved in. One, the Guardians would like...
Who was he dealt? Who did they acquire him for?
I think the Guardians have forgotten and erased it from the media guide. Some trade with the Rays, I don't know. But, okay, so it didn't work out here, but then he goes to Milwaukee, another team that is believed to be very good in pitching development, and they handle things differently. And he ends up having a really good, successful last year with Milwaukee. And so I've wondered over the years, have maybe even they thought about how they can succeed with different sorts of pitchers? Because yes, you've proven to be really good with the guys that you can get your hands on, create some velocity, and take someone that was a third, fourth, fifth round talent and turn him into someone that should have been taken in the first round. But not everyone fits into the same bucket in pitching and how you get it done. So I'm wondering, over the years, have they even learned more about their process and how maybe to be more open-minded with different sorts of pitchers, to not get every single pitcher into the same program and teach them the exact same thing, despite the fact that they're not, 21-year-old Shane Bieber. They're not 24-year-old Corey Kluber. They're different sorts of pitchers.
And every pitcher is going to have a different appetite for information. They're going to want to be instructed in different ways. Some guys can't get enough video. Some guys love the minutia and the data, and some guys don't want to be bothered by it. So there's relationship building there. There's getting to understand just how to, like, everybody has to be coached differently. So I think that's where Willis thrives. I think that's what this organization has done so well is, as you said, they don't have a blanket recipe for success for every single pitcher in the organization. They try to tailor everything to the individual. And when you have somebody new, you have to learn them before you can tailor everything to them. So we've seen the best and the worst of Ortiz thus far. And I feel like whatever he does in his next start, that's the answer, right? He's had one great, one bad, one in the middle. So whatever's next will tip the scales.
Hopefully in a positive direction, I think, for the group that's doing the work with him. Let's kind of bring this full circle on the conversation we were having about the middle infield and what you do there if it just continues to play out. I'm having similar thoughts with the pitching staff. If everything just kind of goes the way that it has and you're not really questioning Bybee or Williams, those two guys are in there, and then Ortiz doing what he's done, so those three, we're good so far there. And then you've got Logan Allen, okay, don't really know what to do with it there, and then Ben Lively. And then I look at Joey Cantillo, who has just looked fantastic coming out of the bullpen. Yes, he still will occasionally get bit by the command bug, but all the good things that this team has said about Cantillo, kind of seen that on display so far in his, 9 1/3 innings, a .96 ERA, a 3.02 expected ERA, a 172 FIP, a 248 xFIP. I mean, everything below the surface suggests this dude's pitching pretty well so far. He's striking out nearly 30% of the batters that he's facing. And yes, again, the walks are going to be there occasionally for him. It's part of the package. You understand that. But it looks like he is really coming a long way and fully developing into being a legitimate pitcher. And while that's great to have a guy like that coming out of the bullpen to do that, I think they all envision Jacob Junis being the guy that does that consistently. Joey Cantillo's just been like the secondary guy that's able to do that. At what point do you want to stretch him out and try to see if he is a legitimate starter to help this team? Because Ben Lively, we've talked about just how much fun it is to watch him try to get by on guts, but he's not thinking into the future, a long-term option to be in this rotation. And I think if they had if they could draw it up perfectly, they'd much rather go with the young guy with great stuff as opposed to the guy that gets you through 5 innings and 3 runs and is solid. You're thinking about development for this team and what makes you better in the long run. Joey Cantillo is a guy that you might want to get into that rotation at some point, but I don't think you're there yet. No one has pitched poorly enough that you're making these sweeping changes in the rotation. Oh, and by the way, Zach, Doug Ninkasi has pitched pretty solidly in the minor leagues, and Parker Messick has looked fantastic, has struck out 10 and walked just 2 so far in the minors. So I think they're going to be asking similar questions about this rotation in the near future, that maybe no one has pitched so poorly that they deserve to get kicked out of the rotation. But what happens when you've got a bunch of young guys or guys that have established themselves as being legitimate good pitchers so far in the majors this season? At what point do you want to see them get more of a shot at the major league level and get them stretched out and let them have the innings?
It's all going to work out, man.
No, give me the answer. April 14th. I need it today.
Just, hey, sit back, relax. Just chill. This stuff works itself out. Doesn't it always? That's what you tell me.
Yes, I know someone will get hurt or someone will pitch poorly enough, but I'm always just curious if it just works this way.
Logan Allen's made 2 starts. I can't predict when it's going to be time to pull the plug. I don't know. I think the question is, how do you build up Cantillo? He's his last 3 outings, 2 1/3, 2 and 2, 22 pitches, 33 pitches, 24 pitches. He's too efficient. He's too good. We need you to pitch worse so that you throw more pitches so that you're built up more. Yeah, he's looked great. You can see, I mean, I know the velocity is like 91, 92, but the extension is as good as it gets in the league. And so hitters will tell you it looks like 96, 97. And then he mixes in the changeup, mixes in the curveball. I mean, he's got good stuff. I wonder, like, is there a role for him just as the second lefty reliever who just throws fastballs and changeups? And like, he could do that. I like, Eric Sabrowski is still probably a month away. So he could just be your second lefty all year if you want. Even like, I don't know. Like, he's looked pretty good in this role so far. Do you have to send him to AAA to build him up? No, you think you could just,
so.
If Logan Allen just tanks his next 2 starts, you think you just swap them or send Logan down?
Well, I'm not even saying, I'm not telling you what the answer is. I'm very curious as to what they think is the answer there for themselves. Where is the line for somebody has to pitch poorly enough that they want that? Yes, they love Cantillo operating in this role that you're saying, but that's all predicated on everybody else ahead of him on the depth chart doing what they're supposed to do. At some point, maybe they're not, and you would want to see more from Cantillo to see if he's more than just your secondary lefty.
Yeah, part of this, like Tristan McKenzie has to be part of this conversation. Doug Nikhazy, as you said, Parker Messick is really interesting. Like, I need to see that guy in 2025 at some point. I don't know. It's one of those where it's like, we're going to have to keep talking about this as we go, because I think it's going to be fluid. And that's before we even get to like Bieber and, eventually John Means. And like, there's going to be, it feels right now like there's not a ton of depth because you've relegated McKenzie to the bullpen, because Cantillo's down there, because like Nikhazy, you don't need to pull the trigger on getting him up here yet. You know what I mean? Like, there's like Messick is probably going to be more big league ready in July than he is now. But you can see how there will be plenty of depth and more aptly put, competition come the summer months. And so I think that's why, yeah, I mean, to your point, like, it's pretty important for Allen and Lively to pitch well now, because those are the 2 guys on the chopping block. And there's a lot of competition coming. And I think, as you said, like, Cantillo is probably the first guy who could force the issue. It's too bad that it's not McKenzie, because he was built up all spring and seemed like it was his job to take and run with, and he couldn't.
The way I think about stretching out is the joke from Family Guy about Ben Affleck trying to he's trying to do a British accent. He's, hello, I'm ready. Like 3. that is essentially what it takes to stretch a guy out now in the major leagues. Whereas before is, he has to be ready to go 6 innings or else we can't throw him out there. Now it's, okay, well, your first time out, you've already been going 2, so give us 3. And the next time out, give us 4. And the next one, 5, and you're a starter now. It really can be, it feels like it can happen that quick with the way bullpens have been utilized to work that way.
You want to make sure, like, you can handpick how you do it too. Maybe you do it before an off day or right after an off day if you're moving him into the rotation just so you have the bullpen protection. Or you just say going in like, hey, you're piggybacking with McKenzie today. So Cantillo, try to get us 4 innings if you can. And then you build up from there. Like, it's definitely doable.
Yeah, I think they've got the arms to make that work.
It's a good question. He is one of the players right now that I'm like, he's not pitching in close games yet. He's not pitching in high leverage, but like, they're down 6-1 and he comes in and I'm like glued to the game. I need to see him pitch. He's really interesting. We saw, again, you remember last year he came up and his first 4 starts were like against the 1927 Yankees, the 95 Indians. And then he finally got to face some lesser competition and maybe a little bit of pressure off. And the guy looked dynamite in September. And so you can see the vision. Like, it's kind of like Ortiz. It's like, we know now what he looks like when he's functioning at high capacity. How do we get him to do that with consistency? And he looks good. He's also like very focused and determined. I tried to have some fun banter with him in spring training, and he's like, no. Like, not having fun. All business. Let's go. Fastballs and changeups and curveballs. That's all I can talk about.
Good. I hope he treated you that way.
You want to talk surfing in Hawaii? Screw that. We're not here to have fun. We're here to get outs.
So if the theme of today is you just got to let it all play out, whether it's in right field, whether it's at second base, shortstop, whether it's in the rotation, is it a similar theme with your closer too?
I think it has to be. I will say it was jarring. See, can you remember a time when they had a reliever, at least during the regular season, someone warming up behind him?
I know we have kind of forgotten because 24 was so good. We forget that 23, he had some scuffles. He had some struggles. So are we doing a disservice and just throwing 23 out and just pretending like, oh, he was elite then too?
Yeah, maybe. It's a little different than he's already given up more earned runs than he did last year.
Well, can I say I'd be a lot more concerned if he was walking 4 and giving up home runs?
Or if he was throwing 96 instead of 99?
Sure. Like, is the stuff as good when he was throwing 102 right now? No, it's not that. But, like, if he's just giving up a lot of hits, and I'm not saying that, like, what he's done now, he should have better results. It's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is it's not so bad that I don't think he can't get to where he needs to be. I just think you just got to let him pitch through it. Not so much that he gets beat up mentally. Like, I don't want you to put him in a position where he's now questioning himself. And I know he talked to the media about that very topic. But, I mean, you need Clase. And you kind of just need to pitch him because you need Clase to be Clase.
Yeah, we've touched on this. I think it's very fixable. I think he does not have a feel for his slider. I think what we talked about with Luis Ortiz, where you're a hitter, you're standing there and you're like, I don't know if this is going to, I don't know which way this fastball is going to move. Is it going to be up, down, cut? Is it a slider? I don't know. So I have to guess and hope I make solid contact. And with Clase, that was the gambit. Like, he's probably going to throw a cutter, but if it's a slider, you're going to look foolish. You're going to swing over it. And I don't think he has a feel for it. And I think what that's led to is a steady diet of cutters where he's not hitting his spots. There was an at-bat the other night after he had given up the 4 hits, which sounds insane to say, with Kevin Biggio, where you could tell, and you've seen this with Clase before, where he just gets mad. He doesn't hide his emotions very well. He just gets mad, and he's, I feel like in the summer months he gets mad and he starts pumping 103. This he was pumping 100, but he was hitting back-to-back pitches to Biggio. They were at the knees on the inside corner, and there's nothing you can do with that. And when he's going really well, and I think he struck Biggio out, but when he's going really well, he can throw a slider there too. And so you get the 99 at the knees on the inside corner, then he throws a slider off that, and that's when it's like hits your back foot and you swing through it. Because you just assume it looks like the cutter, but it's not. It's 92, and it moves more, way more. But he doesn't have that. And so the slider is not fooling anybody. And so hitters are sitting on the cutter. They know it's coming, and he's just catching too much of the plate. But this is all command and approach. It's not some systemic issue. It's not velocity. It's not injury. I think some of it might be mental at this point. Like, it's got to be. You're throwing 15, 20 pitches, and you have to live with the results. And you might get back out there the next night. You might not. It's just, if you're a starter and you have a bad inning, you live with those results and you come back and you throw up a 0 and then another 0. And you can turn a bad first inning into a good start 5 innings later. They called down to the bullpen Saturday night as they were threatening to score more runs in the 8th inning and turning it into a non-save situation. And they said, hey, if this is not a save situation, do you still want to pitch? Do you still want the work? I think they had Seawald warming up too. And Clase, no hesitation. He's like, yeah, put me out there. He wants to be back out there. He wants as many reps as possible so that he can work through this. And that tells me, like, it might take some time. Like, it might not look anything like it did last year when he was at the peak of his powers, but there's too much track record and there's too many signs. As you said, he's not walking people. Like, the worst, oh no, like him at his worst means he's throwing too many strikes. Like that's a solvable problem, right? So I think he'll be okay. The good thing is he's not costing them games either. That's the key. In 23, it felt like every time he wasn't perfect, they were losing games. Didn't he blow 12 saves that year? So, and his ERA was 3-something. Like, it's not like it was 6. Joe Borowski, we watched save 47 games with an ERA of 5.5. So maybe it's just going to be one of those seasons.
I think you said the key word, though, reps. I think that's just, you got to keep serving the reps up on a platter for him and see what happens with it. Partially because for your team to get where they ultimately want to be, they need Clase. For as good as some of the other arms in that bullpen are, you need Clase to be a really good pitcher. And I just consider this an early season investment. Are there times where the investment doesn't work out? Sure, but I think this is an early season investment in serving up the reps so that you can get him on the role that you need him to be on.
I would buy low on him.
But you know what that means? Just need more time.
Don't we all?